was permitted to cross their path. This is why in those days it was quite impossible to persuade anybody of stature from academic or professional backgrounds to come into politics from the Tamil community. It was not merely difficult, it was absolutely impossible. Because whoever came forward knew that his days would be numbered. One of my close associates was the late Dr. Neelan Tiruchaiva, who proceeded to the United States of America to Harvard University on a Fulbright scholarship when I proceeded to the University of Oxford on a Rhodes scholarship. We were undergraduates together in the University of Peradeniya, and our paths crossed again when we entered Parliament together in the same year, 1994. He was one of the outstanding intellects, not only of the Tamil community but of Sri Lanka, acknowledged as such all over the world, particularly in the United States. He was brutally killed by the LTT for no other reason than that he was projecting a point of view different from that of the LTT. So there was no space, absolutely no space for the articulation of any point of view which differed in any manner whatsoever from the views, the ideology of the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam. A complete stranglehold on the Tamil people. And as Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa said, Tamil businessmen were totally inhibited because they would be kidnapped if they did not pay ransoms. So that was the climate of fear that prevailed in the north and the east of the country at that time. And it was to bring that tragic state of affairs, tragic not in a political sense, tragic in a human sense. It was to bring that tragic state of affairs to an end that this military operation was embarked upon. The idea was to bring the whole island under the aegis of the legitimate government of Sri Lanka, to empower the Tamil people, to create an environment which was conducive to their living a life of freedom and dignity, the full flowering of their personality, the full exploitation of their potential in all walks of life. Let them play their role in the economic life of the nation, in the political life of the nation. The people of Jaffna had a very proud history. There are celebrated names like Sir Ponnambalam Arunachalam, Sir Ponnambalam Ramanathan, Sir Arunachalam Mahadeva, who played not just a significant but an indispensable role in the struggle which culminated in the independence which Sri Lanka won from Great Britain. These were silver-tongued orators. They were outstanding intellects. They were people who were looked up to by the people of the North, and indeed the people of Sri Lanka as a whole. The purpose of this operation was to revive those memories, to enable people to participate fully and vigorously in business activities, in educational activities, to live their life to the full without surrendering their inalienable birthright, their right to freedom, their right to dignity, without surrendering that to a terrorist organization. So that was the purpose for which this military operation was embarked upon. Very different from the conventional reasons why wars are fought. I think it is very important to bear this in mind. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa told you that this brought about a situation in which the armed forces were called upon to discharge duties that were different from the classical role. He used the phrase classical role. That is certainly the case. The functions, the responsibilities that were attributed to the armed forces had to be different because the objective of the operation was entirely different. Now, what was this role, what Mr. Rajapaksa described as being different from the classical role? What is this role that was ascribed to Sri Lanka's armed forces at that time? Let us look at some of the actual duties which they performed on the ground and how different those are from the aggression that is typical of military action. Before the war came to an end, on the 18th of May 2009, the armed forces were called upon actually to intervene in situations where the LTT was abducting children. There are heart-rending stories of parents trying desperately to prevent their children from being recruited by the LTT. At one time, the edict of the LTT required a Tamil family to surrender one child. Later on, in the military operations, that was increased to 2 children. Now I know students of mine, there is a student of mine who occupies a very senior position in the University of Colombo in the law faculty. He has a close relative in the University of Jaffna. So I'm familiar with some of the happenings in that part of the country at that time, out of my own personal knowledge. In those days, Tamil families were reluctant to put their washing out to dry. They did not want to put their washing out to dry because that would be an indication that that house was occupied, it was inhabited. And that would then make it possible for the LTT to visit that house and to demand that the parents surrender custody of their children. So the armed forces had to intervene in that situation to protect the Tamil people of this country from the LTT. Now this is why, and this is a matter for profound sadness more than for anger, that the so-called experts appointed by the Secretary General of the United Nations to report on the situation in Sri Lanka have come up with the preposterous view that this was a military action between the Sinhala and Tamil communities. How can one possibly say so? When the armies of the state had to intervene to protect Tamil families, there can be no greater, no more precious possession to a parent than his child. It is the Sri Lankan army that had to intervene to make it possible for parents to continue to have their children with them. That was the reality of the situation. So those are some of the non-classical roles that were attributed to the armed forces at that time. Now this report, which we describe as the Darusman report, contains a passage in which they themselves accept that when the Tamil civilians who were being forcibly retained by the LTT in that part of the country that was being occupied by them, when the civilians tried to escape to government-controlled territory, where all facilities awaited them, food, health facilities, housing, all of that was available. And as we saw in the video that was shown some time ago, when the Tamil civilians tried to come into the government-controlled territory, the LTT opened fire. In the Darusman report, there is a passage in which there is a graphic description of women and children floundering in the waters of the lagoon when they were trying to cross, and how the army, members of the army had to intervene to help these older people and children to find their way to safety. Now that is the spirit of empathy and compassion that is vividly reflected in the images there. This little child and that elderly man. That is a reflection of our culture. Every country has a culture that is endemic to that nation.